Welcome back to Roaming the Sierra Nevada and her watersheds. Today we will journey through time, seeing how technology interfaced with California's geology helped create the California we know today. How did our Sierra Nevada mountain range come to be? To explain, we need first to start with a theory of plate tectonics. German geologist Alfred Wegener in November 1926 presented his theory of continental plate movement to a symposium of petroleum producers.
Continent's moving, he's been eating local weed.
Of course, Wegener was correct. Our continental plates have been shifting for billions of years. They can move at the rip-roaring speed of 2.5 centimeters per year. We will begin our story of the Sierra Nevada mountain range highlighting two shifting plates, the North American plate and the Farallon plate. It has been over a half a century since I've had a geology class, so we'll make a quick stop at Sierra College and ask a professor for some help. Professor of Earth Science Richard Hilton, the stage is yours.
If you go back over 100 million years ago, when dinosaurs were roaming the Earth, the area that we're in here in Rockland, Roseville, there was a huge mountain range here. A mountain range that would resemble the Andes or our Cascade Mountain ranges of the Pacific Northwest. The actual beach would have been probably somewhere in the middle of the valley, and there would have been volcanoes above us. So at that time the seafloor was diving under North America as North America was coming westward. The mountain range would be above that diving seafloor, and the seafloor brings down with it a lot of muds and sands and water. And what happens is water tends to lower melting temperatures. So once you get it deep enough, we get these large masses of molten magma. And magma is a liquid rock that's underground. So it's a hot, glowing red fluid underground. And we get miles of this stuff, and it migrates up into the core of the mountain range. And it might be 20 miles across this molten magma, and then it takes literally millions of years to slowly cool off. And as it cools off, it grows crystals, and that's what forms our granite. You notice when you see a piece of granite, it's speckled, and it's speckled because you can see the hornblende, and you can see the feldspars, and you can see the quartz. These are all minerals that have grown in the granite when it cooled so slowly. Now above the granite there would be faults, there would be cracks, and hot fluids from the granite would go into those faults and cracks. On the way up, it might go through what we call a sulfide zone. Some of the rocks that were scraped off the seafloor have metals and sulfur in them. And the quartz, which is going to be within these hot fluids, has about the same melting temperature. And it's going to winnow out minerals, and one of them is gold. Gold and quartz have about the same melting temperature. So this quartz and gold goes up as a fluid into the cracks, and then in the cracks it cools, and it crystallizes. The quartz crystallizes out separately from the gold, but they're intermixed in the same unit. So most of our bedrock gold comes from these quartz veins that have come up into older rock. Now locally, we have had some of these granitic, what we call plutons, becoming solid after a very long period of time, and then another pluton melting into it. And that's the case here with the Rockland pluton. It melted into the Penryn pluton. And sometimes what happens is you get cracks in the older granite, and quartz comes up with gold there. So we actually found quartz veins in granitic intrusions, in granitic plutons, here in the Rockland, Auburn area.
Outlined in red highlights the Sierra Nevada range. Running north to south, it runs about 400 miles and covers 39,612 square miles. As the chart illustrates, the primary rock of the mountain chain is granite. The more rugged and impassable peaks of exposed batholiths are in the southern part of the range, with Mount Whitney being 14,505 feet in elevation. Other forces helped create the Sierra as we know it. Not all the magma remained trapped within the Earth's crust. Some of the magma escaped, turning to lava as volcanoes were created. During periods of glaciation, glaciers helped carve the mountains. Erosion would remove the topsoil, slowly exposing the batholiths. California's first people might have arrived as early as 20,000 years ago. Pre-European contact indicate that their population may have been as high as 700,000, the highest population density in what is today the United States. Our first people found food plentiful. You might say California was their Garden of Eden. Gold had no value. Obsidian and granite did have value. Obsidian made excellent arrowheads and knives. Tribes quarried for obsidian and traded obsidian for other goods. Families gathered around streams. Bedrock mortars served as their kitchen. Next to almost every stream you will find silent reminders of their presence. Early trappers brought European diseases. Along the California coast, Spanish military and missionaries practiced forced labor as well as disrupted their family traditions. The California gold rush would further decimate their numbers. Gold was to be found in streams and rivers. Our first people were chased off their land. Murder, lynching, sickness, starvation reduced their numbers even more. Even after California's statehood, our first people were denied basic civil rights. By 1900, their population had dropped to less than 40,000. Picture what the 1848 wagon trains experienced. Pulled by oxen, they were slow but powerful. On the brighter side, edible when provisions would become low. The journey over the Rockies had been fairly easy. Then came the flat, dry desert in Nevada. The sighting of the Sierra must have jolted them. The mountain range is wedge-shaped. A sheer granite batholith blocked their passage. How did they traverse the granite outcropping? Truckee Trail over solid granite. Our road continues, rocky and crossing the branch to the south side of South Yuba River, and then ascend a hill, solid rocks, and descent very bad. Justice Canner Lincoln, September 21st, 1849. To climb or descend over granite barriers, sometimes the wagon had to be disassembled. A rope was tied to a tree. With either brute human strength or with the use of oxen, the wagons were hoisted or lowered. To avoid damage to the sharp granite ledge, a log would be laid at the lip of the granite ledge. Truckee Trail, descent to Bear Valley. Came to the worst hill we have found yet. Not so rocky as some others, but steeper and longer. After passing down this descent, we came to a level valley on Bear River with pretty good grass and encampment. John Pritchett, August 29, 1849. A simple error reaching the Sierra summit too late as fall turned to winter could be deadly. In 1865, the bloody Civil War was coming to an end. The population of California was approaching 700,000. The President and Mrs. Lincoln will be attending Ford's Theater. Lincoln has one last appointment. He will be meeting with then Speaker of the House, Schuyler Colfax. At their meeting, Lincoln asked Colfax to tour the West. Lincoln wanted Colfax to express the nation's gratitude for the miners' hard work. If it were not for the gold and silver mines providing wealth to the North might not have won the war. At the start of the Civil War, the North's paper money, known as greenbacks, could be exchanged for gold. For 5 years, the Civil War dragged on. Eventually, the North did not have enough gold to sustain its currency. However, there was a promise that at the end of the war, the U.S. currency would once again be redeemed in gold. The Western territories and new states were all controlled by the North. Our indigenous tribes lived in a symbiotic relationship with nature. By 1865, California was changing. The transformation of California into an industrial state, bending nature to man's wishes, can best be viewed by Schuyler Colfax's 1865 expedition west. May 16, 1865, the Sacramento Daily Bee announced that Speaker of the House Colfax and company will be leaving on tour with the goal of visiting San Francisco. For his 2,000-mile stagecoach fact-finding adventure of the western United States, Colfax invited Lieutenant Governor of Illinois, William Brose, Samuel Bowles, publisher and editor of the Springfield, Massachusetts Republic newspaper, and Albert D. Richardson, a well-known journalist, a former Union spy, and well-known writer. Upon returning east, both Bowles and Richardson wrote books on their adventure. Their travelogue on life west of the Mississippi in 1865 makes interesting reading. By 1865, stagecoaches traveled 5 to 7 miles per hour, ran 24 hours per day, taking well-planned rest stops, dinner stops, and stops to change horses and drivers. By late June, they arrived in the silver town of Virginia City, Nevada. A lot had changed since the 1849 California Gold Rush. To traverse the Sierra, there were now 2 toll roads to choose from, a northern route which crossed north of Lake Tahoe and a southern route which skirted south of Lake Tahoe. Colfax chose the more popular southern route. Colfax, joined by 20 guests, chaperoned him on the next leg to San Francisco. First, a stagecoach ride up to Lake Tahoe, which was followed by a steamboat cruise across to the California side of the lake. Steamboat service on Lake Tahoe had begun in the spring of 1864. Once on the California side, Colfax and his 3 traveling companions would board a stagecoach for the descent of the Sierra Nevada mountains. The stagecoach from Lake Tahoe to Placerville would depart late. Colfax, Brose, Bowles, and Richardson, plus 20 other passengers, would either cram themselves into the coach or ride topside. Monk was the stagecoach driver. With a sudden snap of the whip, followed by a terrifying lurch, 6 galloping horses began the charge down the Sierra Nevada mountains at a speed of 12 miles per hour. Richardson began his tale. Mr. Greeley, a passenger with a gold chain and a self-imposed judicial personage, complained immediately of being jostled violently. "I will have you discharged before the week is out. Do you know who I am, sir?" "Oh, yes," replied Monk, "but I am going to take this coach into Placerville on time, if it kills every one-horse judge in the state of California." Richardson continued, "Now the broad winding road are beautifully smooth, and in summer sprinkled with water from carts for 60 miles to keep down all the enveloping dust. The carts are supplied from great wooden water tanks 2 or 3 miles apart. Down the narrow, winding shelf road our horses went leaping at a gallop. It is a thrilling ride, for at many points a divergence of 6 inches from the track would send the coach rolling from 500 to 1,000 feet down the mountain into the foaming stream bed of a yawning canyon. The track was half covered with great California freight wagons. One carries from 6 to 10 tons and is drawn by 10 or 12 mules, each bearing on his saddle 4 tinkling bells. With perfect confidence and the nicest calculation, our driver whirled us around sharp corners and through gaps between the freighters and the precipice, barely wide enough for our wheels. For weeks afterwards, one's blood bounds of the idea of going on stagecoach again. For weeks afterwards, one's blood bounds at the memory of its whirl and rush. Richardson estimated that the stage ride from Lake Tahoe down the Sierra to Placerville was 72 miles. With rest stops, the journey was just 7 hours. 9 more miles found them in Shingle Springs. Just west of the Sierra foothill town of Placerville, also known as Hangtown, was Shingle Springs. Shingle Springs was the railhead for the Sacramento Valley Line. The SVRR was the oldest rail line in California. It too had plans to build east. A special coach had been arranged for Colfax and his party. After being jostled in stagecoaches since having left Kansas, they now sat back and enjoyed a pleasant 2-hour ride into Sacramento. In front of the Sacramento Orleans Hotel, the Speaker of the House received a warm greeting. Colfax's visit to Sacramento was brief. His goal was to visit San Francisco. The side-whaler, Christopolis, awaited at the pier. Just 11 days after having left Sacramento, Colfax had arrived back in Sacramento. The Sacramento Bee Daily reported that Mr. Colfax arrived here this morning on a steamer from San Francisco, and at 4 o'clock a.m., accompanied by several gentlemen of the city, took a train on the Central Pacific Railroad for Clipper Gap. There, they will proceed to Oregon via Nevada, Grass Valley, and Marysville. The newspaper article was only partially correct. Colfax, Browse, Bowles, and Richardson did catch an early train to Clipper Gap. The locals who joined them were the executives for the Central Pacific Railroad. Leland Stanford, the former governor of California, and then current president of the Central Pacific Railroad, arranged for the tour for his distinguished guest. July 11th, 1865, Clipper Gap was the end of the line. A 6-horse coach awaited the distinguished guest. Richardson described what he saw next. Upon this little section of road, 4,000 laborers were at work, 1/10 Irish, the rest Chinese. They were a great army laying siege to nature in her strongest citadel. The rugged mountains looked like stupendous anthills. They swarmed with celestials, shoveling and wheeling, carting, drilling and blasting rocks and earth, while their dull, moony eyes stared out from under immense basket hats like umbrellas. At several dining camps we saw hundreds sitting on the ground eating soft-boiled rice with chopsticks as fast as terrestrials could with soup ladles. Irish laborers received $30 per month, gold, and board. Chinese $31, boarding themselves. After a little expense, the latter were quite as efficient and far less troublesome. As their coach rose into the Sierra, one of the most important Sierra foothills towns the delegation would visit was Dutch Flat. I should point out that the Big Four owned the northern toll route over the Sierra Nevada mountains. The historical marker summarizes its historic importance. Founded in the spring of 1851 by Joseph and Charles Dornbach, from 1854 to 1882, it was noted for its rich hydraulic mining. In 1860, it had the largest voting population in Placer County. Chinese inhabitants numbered about 2,000. Here, Theodore Judah and Dr. D.W. Strong made the original subscription to build the first Transcontinental Railroad. Mark Twain had visited Dutch Flat's Opera House a number of times. He called Dutch Flat the Athens of the foothills. There was a dark side to Dutch Flat. Samuel Bowles did not see Athens, but he did see the devil's inferno of hell. Hydraulic mining. The water is brought long distances from mountains, lakes, or rivers through ditches and flumes, sometimes supported by trestle work 50 to 100 feet high, to near the theater of operations. Then it is let from flumes into large and stout iron pipes, which grow smaller and smaller. Out of these it is passed through hoses. It is fired with a terrible force into the banks of the earth, which is steadily torn down and washed into sluice boxes. Streams would instantly kill a man. Frequently, serious accidents occurs from this cause. Of course, all these enterprises create a wide waste in their path. None of the interior streams of California, though naturally pure as crystal, escape the change to thick yellow mud. The Sacramento is worse than the Missouri. Thousands of acres of fine land along their banks are ruined forever. A farmer may have his whole estate turned to waste. There are no rights which mining respects in California. Samuel Bowles had mentioned that the Sacramento River had become polluted from hydraulic mining waste being dumped into local streams and rivers. After finishing their escorted tour led by Leland Stanford, Colfax, Richardson, Brose, and Bowles would head north to Marysville. Marysville was 41 miles north of Sacramento. Like Sacramento, Marysville was a river town and gateway to the Mother Lode. Flowing west, the Feather River created the northern border of Marysville. The Yuba formed the southern border. Together they would quickly empty into the Sacramento River. The massive hydraulic mining operations upstream on the Yuba River's watershed had a profound effect downstream in Marysville and Sacramento. 4 years before Colfax and his associates had passed through Marysville and in Nevada City, in 1852 the story of hydraulic mining began. A French-Canadian, Anthony Chabot, and his partner, Edward Madison, hooked up water hoses, added a nozzle, and directed the high-pressure stream of water at an embankment. Miners from southern mines, such as Dutch Flat, flocked to see and copied the new technology. In 1866, the Bloomfield Mining Company was formed. The mining company built dams, flumes, and ditches in order to bring water 45 miles west to their gold fields. Their monitors, as the water cannons were called, were the largest available. Over 18 years, 12,600,000 square feet of waste sludge, or slickens as it was called, would be released through a massive drainage tunnel. As the slickens settled to the river's bottom, the rivers widened, exacerbating the flooding of the cities and farmlands. Farmers, local cities, and even the Southern Pacific Railroad sued the new Bloomfield Mining Company. In January of 1884, Judge Lorenzo Sawyer ruled in favor of the plaintiff, forcing the hydraulic mining operations to cease operation. Hydraulic mining did not stop suddenly by the Sawyer decision. With millions of dollars invested, the mine owners were not in the mood to stop production. A new technology, however, would help the mine owners to keep their mines open. Only a year after Alexander Graham Bell spoke his famous words to Mr. Watson, in 1877, the world's first long-distance telephone line was established. The Milton Mining Company had a telephone line built between their French dam and the mine's headquarters at French Canal. With the need to regulate water flow to the hydraulic miners downstream, the phone line would provide quick communication. French Canal marked the end of the canal system, which also flowed through the infamous North Bloomfield hydraulic mining operation. The Milton Company controlled 3 dams which fed into 100 miles of ditches. If you add Bloomfield's canals and flumes, there were a total of 320 miles of flumes and ditches. A call to the dams could quickly increase or decrease water volume. After the 1884 Sawyer decision, which stopped hydraulic mining, the mines would have periodic inspections to see if the mines had, in fact, ceased operation. A serious cat-and-mouse game began between the farmers' spies and the mine owners' spies.
Hey, Jensen, our contact in Marysville said the marshal is inspecting today. No, Gary. Johnson from the Illinois isn't coming. I said marshal is coming. Shut down the flow of water. Can't have him thinking we are still mining. Oh, forget it, Jensen. The marshal's already here. Them farmer spies are better than our spies.
Earlier, with Sierra streams played out, placer miners had already left for new gold fields in other territories. Some even caught passage to Melbourne, Australia's gold fields. With the end of hydraulic mining, towns like Bloomfield became ghost towns. Grass Valley was one of California's richest mining communities. Here Colfax and his companions viewed quartz mines. This was hard rock mining. Miners followed quartz veins deep into the earth. Founded in 1850, the Empire Mine was one of California's richest mines and would remain in operation until 1951. The mine reached a depth of 11,000 feet, as well as digging 367 miles of crisscrossing tunnels. In its century of operation, the Empire Mine produced 5.8 million ounces of gold. Today, the Grass Valley Empire's Mine is a state park. Whether the gold was collected by panning, hydraulic mining, hard rock mining, or dredging, the gold-bearing gravel had to be parted and processed into pure gold. At the beginning of the gold rush, the parting process used mercury. Later, a more efficient method used acids like cyanide. Today, these forever pollutants still haunt the Sierra, as well as the Sacramento watershed and San Francisco Bay. Before we leave Schuyler Colfax and his colleagues as they headed north to British Columbia, I want to return for a moment to their tour of the construction of the Transcontinental Railroad. Leland Stanford wanted to show Schuyler Colfax the plans for a new railroad town to be built at the 54-mile marker from Sacramento. The proposed town would be just a half-mile from the already established community named Illinois Town. Stanford would honor the Speaker of the House by naming the new town Colfax. As the Sawyer injunction took effect, the water cannons, water ditches, and flumes fell silent. Within a decade, however, the technology that fed the hydraulic mining industry would be repurposed, serving a new technology. Lester Pelton, born of humble birth in a log cabin in Ohio in 1850 with only a grade school education, 21 years of age, Pelton migrated to California seeking a quick fortune in California's gold rush. He settled in a stagecoach stop and mining town named Camptonville, a town which bragged it had 50 saloons. Camptonville was located 27 miles north of Grass Valley, near the Yuba River, on the road to Downeyville. Like so many Argonauts, Pelton failed at gold mining. He tried a number of different occupations, settling on being a millwright. Working in the heart of the gold mining industry, Pelton became fascinated about the equipment used in the mines. He self-educated himself by watching and reading books on mining equipment. Pelton became interested in how the mines provided mechanical power to do the heavy lifting. Some of the mines used steam engines, which were fueled by coal or firewood. Coal was expensive. Wood was in short supply as both the mines and the railroads were decimating the forest. Readily available was rivers, streams, and flumes. For ages, rivers had provided the mechanical power through the use of water wheels. The gold fields of the Sierra Nevada had smaller, faster running streams and flumes. A different way of turning Sierra streams and flumes into mechanical energy was needed. The mines had experimented with water turbines, but they proved inefficient. Pelton noticed that if you split the water cups so the jets of water hit both sides of the cup, the turbines would run more efficiently. In October of 1880, Pelton received his patent. At the George Allen Foundry in Nevada City, the first Pelton water wheel was cast. Seams of quartz laden with gold traveled in all directions. Using pick and shovel would be a hopeless task. The answer to the mine owner's problem was to be found thousands of miles away in the Alps. The French and the Italian governments wanted to increase trade. To do so, they would need to create a tunnel through the Alps. The task was estimated to would have taken 40 years. Germain Sommier, a French-Italian engineer, had a solution. He introduced the first industrial-scale pneumatic drills to accomplish the task. The Frugias rail tunnel opened in October 1871. The construction time was reduced to 13 years. The marriage of the Pelton wheel and modern pneumatic drilling equipment would take place at the North Star Mine in Grass Valley. To operate pumps, hoists, drills, forages, and a ventilation system, a new source of energy was needed. The task of resolving the problem was assigned to the North Star's mining engineer, Arthur Day Wint Foote. Foote was a graduate of Yale University and an experienced civil mining engineer. He first considered using electric power, but deemed electric was too new and was probably unreliable. Foote decided to use compressed air to operate the entire mine's mechanical operations. Construction began in 1895. A 20-inch pipe called a penstock was laid 7,070 feet, connecting the Empire Mine's water supply to the North Star's mine. The pipe would cross Wolf Creek by way of an aqueduct before entering the powerhouse. The change in elevation from the Empire Mine to the North Star Mine was a drop of 800 feet. The drop in elevation would create 180 pounds of water pressure per square inch, which was then ejected through a 1.5 inch nozzle directed at the Pelton wheel. As the water gates were first opened, naysayers, knockers as they were called, waited outside the powerhouse, waiting for Foote's contraption to explode. To their disappointment, the project was a huge success. A second pelt wheel was even larger, 30 feet in diameter, was added in 1898. The system ran 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for 30 years. What if your mine was located in an isolated desert location, or your stream ran dry in California's summer heat? The Pelton wheel would be of no use. A newer technology would be needed. Paris, the City of Lights, 1878. The city lit its international show with a newly invented lighting system, arc lights.
Les lumières sont si belles, c'est un miracle.
As the young lady commented, it was beautiful. Every major city in the world began lighting their streets with arc lamps. Thomas Edison would see a niche market for lighting inside every home in America. Edison began using steam-driven engines to turn electric generators, providing electric current to neighborhoods. Electrical transmission technology was changing quickly. A battle between Thomas Edison and Nikola Tesla raged. Edison favored direct current, while Tesla favored alternating current. Edison noted that DC current was safer. Tesla found that you could send electrical current over long distances using AC current. Notice the electric chair on the slide? To prove his point, it has been reported Edison wanted to use AC power to electrocute a condemned man.
I told you AC is dangerous.
In any case, Tesla won the battle as our transmission lines run on AC current. On the West Coast, bragging rights must go to Portland, Oregon. Portland received DC power from Willamette Falls Powerhouse, a distance of 14 miles. In early 1890, a meeting was held in room 74 on the third floor of the National Hotel in Nevada City. 3 men, Eugene de Sabla, Jr., Alfonso Tregado, and John Martin. They would also welcome a 4th guest, Romulus Colgate, nicknamed Rome. If Colgate's last name sounded familiar, you would be correct. Romulus was the grandson of the famous Colgate perfume and soap company founder. Romulus had come west to invest in gold mines. The purpose of the meeting was to discuss electrification of not only the hard rock gold mines, but also the towns of Grass Valley and Nevada City. They named their new company the Nevada Electric Company. The newly formed company purchased unused mining claims around an old reservoir. Like the North Star powerhouse, water would be released into a penstock. The diameter of the penstock would be reduced by the size of a nozzle. The force of the water would rotate a Pelton water wheel with tremendous speed. On February 5, 1896, alternating current arrived in Nevada City. The powerhouse was named Rome Powerhouse, honoring Romulus Colgate. While the Grass Valley Rome Powerhouse was being pieced together, back in Bodie, the Standard Mill used the Green Creek, which was located 14 miles away from the mine. The mine owners installed a Pelton wheel connected to an AC generator. 14 miles of power poles would bring electric power to the mine's stamp mill, becoming the first stamp mill to be run by electric power. No longer tethered by being close to local streams for power, electrification would permit expansion of mining operations. The Nevada Power Company would combine with other small powerhouses, eventually growing to become Pacific Gas and Electric. Today, PG&E uses water from 100 reservoirs, mostly located in the higher elevations of the Sierra Nevada. Just as in the beginning, water runs through penstocks and into powerhouses, creating electric power. PG&E currently has 68 powerhouses servicing 4 million homes. As the new century began, the water rights, flumes, water ditches, and dams would have to be repurposed once again for the needs of the 20th century. Counties would take charge by creating new water agencies, such as Nevada Irrigation District and the Placer County Water Agency. Johnny, you might hear a train a-rolling, but it isn't going to San Antone. It is heading to Shingle Springs. Which, in truth, brings us back to where our story began. Our last tale begins like most of our other stories. A failed gold prospector decided to take a different direction and find success. His name was Horatio G Livermore. By 1856, Horatio figured out that he could make more money selling both lumber and water than panning for gold. He and his sons bought up the water rights and land next to the town of Folsom. To mill lumber, you need a dam and a canal to float the logs. About the same time, California was in need of a second state prison. State's requirements were simple: a lot of space and granite for the prison walls. Folsom was the perfect location. Remember, from Rockland to Folsom, a granite batholith was just below the Earth's surface. Livermore would donate the land for the prison in exchange for prison labor. With plenty of granite available, the prisoners could build their own prison cells and construct Livermore's dam. The lumber industry did not turn the profit that the Livermores expected. However, with the elevated dam completed, the Livermore children, father had passed away, saw a new opportunity in hydroelectric power. Using AC current, a 22-mile power line was constructed to California's capital, Sacramento. On the morning of July 13, 1895, power was received in Sacramento Station A. On September 9th, California's admission day into the Union, a grand electric carnival was held. As for Folsom Prison, it was the first California state prison to receive electric power. If you drive through the Mother Lode, you will see the water ditches are still flowing. They now convey water to California's new gold: agriculture, manufacturing, and urbanization. After World War II, California's water demands increased. A new era of dam building began. In 1952, with the completion of the new Folsom Dam, the Folsom Powerhouse was retired. The old powerhouse is now a state park, perfectly preserved. Because you are not allowed into any other PG&E powerhouse, the California State Park's Folsom Powerhouse allows you to step back a century in time. If you take Highway 49 south from Auburn, the highway dips as you cross the American River. If you look to your right, you will see a concrete bridge. The bridge was built for a railroad which carried rocks from a quarry. The rocks, like gold or granite, would help change California's history. We will save the story of the No Hands Bridge for our next adventure. To view other videos on my series, Wandering the Sierra Nevada and Her Watersheds, they can be viewed on my website, www.youtube.com/c/MichaelStark1. The Dry Creek Conservancy can be reached at either our Facebook page or www.drycreekconservancy.org.